So today I want to talk about Las Vegas real estate, past, present, and future. What does the future hold for us? Will we be able to make it out of this coronavirus pandemic unscathed, or will we have another housing crash? To give you a little bit of background about myself, I have been doing real estate photography in Las Vegas for the last 10 years. I've shot many homes, from the cheapest house to the most expensive home. I've worked with lots of different agents and talked to lots of sellers over the years. I always pick their brains to kind of see where they're at and, what's going on with the market. I'm not a real estate agent. I don't know, I don't follow any charts or see what's going on with the market. I don't read any market reports. I purely base my opinions just based on interactions I have with people and things that people tell me. There was a boom in the 90s. My grandfather moved out here to Las Vegas in 96. And at the time, there were people moving out here, but Las Vegas was still not that popular. There was still a lot of desert. I remember when he bought his house, there was nothing north of where he lived. It was just all desert from his house to the mountains. Things were consistently rising. And then about 2007, 2008, we had the recession and everything tanked. We were the number one place in the country for foreclosures, so we got hit harder than anywhere else in the country. At the time I was selling cars, the manager of the dealership I was working at, he had just bought a brand new home. He had paid, I think it was like 1.1 or 1.2 million dollars for his house. It was brand new in Centennial Hills. It was like a brand new development. There was nothing up there at the time. After the market crashed, he got his home reevaluated again, and his property was only worth $725. So that kind of gives you an idea of how bad we got hit here in town. And this is a guy who was making, he was probably making close to 20 grand a month. He was making good money, but when that came, he let his house go too. He didn't pay on his house anymore. So, it affected everyone. It affected people who had money. It affected people who didn't have money. It affected everyone. And that's kind of why we had this big thing of foreclosures. People were just not paying their mortgages anymore. If you had a mortgage for a $300,000 home, and they're telling you still got to make your payments, but now your home is only worth $100,000. Well, in your mind, you're like, why am I going to pay $300,000 back if my home is only worth $100,000? So a lot of people were just like, screw it, and they just didn't pay it anymore, and they just let their loans go bad. So a lot of people were leaving. A lot of people were mad at the time, so they were mad at the banks and stuff. So they were, pouring concrete down their drains. They were like ripping stuff out of the walls. It was pretty bad out here for a while. A lot of vacancies, a lot of squatters. We had a lot of problems out here in Las Vegas, and we slowly bounced back. The one good thing that kind of saved us is the casinos and the tourism. Even though we as a country were hurting from the recession, people were still coming to town. We had a lot of people from Brazil coming, and they were spending money. And, the casinos weren't really too affected by the recession. Things were still going, so people still had jobs. People weren't able to afford their mortgage anymore, but it wasn't because they didn't have a job. It was because they just took bad loans, and, their payments bubbled overnight from, $900 to $1,800, $2,500, $3,000, and they weren't able to afford it anymore. But people were still working, and they still had money. Some people weren't working, but for the most part, everyone was still working. It's not anywhere near how it is right now with the coronavirus, where like everything is shut down. So it was a real slow economic. We had to really build it back up, and right around 2010, 2011, things started picking back up. Home prices started going back up. Real estate was starting to pick up again. And at the time, I saw what was happening, and I was like, we should probably start looking for a house right now. And we started looking for a house, I want to say maybe like late 2010. And we didn't end up getting something until like almost a year and a half, 2 years later, because we just couldn't find anything that we really liked. But in those 2 years' time, properties that we were looking at that were $150,000 were now $200,000. They were now $225,000, $250,000. So in 2 years, houses that were in our price range were no longer in our price range, and that kind of forced us not into panic mode, but it really made us like, all right, we need to find something soon, because pretty soon we're not going to be able to afford what we're actually looking for. So we ended up finding a place, and at the time, in 2012, we bought a home. It's a half an acre, 2,200 square feet, and we paid $215,000, which at the time was a pretty good deal. It was still like a little high because homes in the area were going for like 150, 175, but the property was nice, so we paid a little bit of money. Today, according to like Zillow and stuff, my house is worth like 425, which I would never be able to afford that house today. So you got to figure in less than 10 years, my home has doubled in price. So if that's doubled in price, right, you would think that other things have doubled in price, like my wages and stuff like that, but they haven't. The same amount of money I was getting paid to shoot nightclubs and houses and stuff like that, it's the same amount of money I'm making today. Nothing has changed. If anything, things have gotten more competitive, and you have to charge less rates now sometimes just to get the jobs you want. So housing prices have gone up. Everything has gone up. Cost of food's gone up. Everything's gone up, but wages have stayed the same here in Las Vegas. They may have gone up for some, but for the most part, I think people are still making around $10 an hour. Seems to be like the norm in Las Vegas, which if you're living in California, $10 an hour ain't going to cut it. But $10 an hour out here, if you got, if you're a couple and both of you guys are working at $10 an hour, you can make ends meet. You can pay your bills and still, live pretty good out here. But nowadays, if you're trying to take that $10 an hour job and trying to buy a house, it ain't going to happen, man. So what happened? How did things get so expensive out here? Well, a lot of it is outside people from out of state. You had people from California coming here. You had outside investors from China and other places buying property here. And if you compare the property value here in Nevada compared to places like LA or New York or other places, it is so cheap to live here. The problem is, if you live here and you live off of Las Vegas wages, then it's okay. It works out. The cost of living that you're making, you can afford something to live here. But if you're coming from California and you just sold your house in California and you bring that money over here to Nevada, well, guess what? You're going to be able to buy a really nice house. Cash money. You don't even got to make payments on it. So people from California, what they were doing is they were selling their house cash. They're, a house out here that costs $200,000, in LA maybe $800,000. Okay, they sell that money out there. They come over here to buy the house cash. They don't even blink at the prices because they're like, it's so cheap, right? So what ends up happening is the prices go up and 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 up, right? And the locals eventually get priced out where they can't afford it anymore. Why? Because the locals are still living off of local wages, and the people who are buying the homes are all outside of state who got lots of money coming in because they're coming from a place that the cost of living is higher. And now when they're moving here, the cost of living is not as high. So that's how we got to where we are now with our housing, with the houses prices being as high as they are. The prices of houses are higher than they were back before the first bust at 2007. So that's not good. I don't think that's a good thing. I think that's bad. Because like I said, locals can't afford to live here anymore. So what happens at the beginning of this year? COVID comes and everything in Las Vegas shuts down. Now, Las Vegas is not the same as other cities in this country. And what I mean by that is we are a city that's purely based on tourism traffic. We live and die off of tourism. When things are booming here, when the casinos are busy, when people are visiting, when the casinos are making money, the rest of the city is making money too, because people want to come here and there's lots of work for people to go around. When tourism is down and no one's here and no one's coming, the whole city suffers. And that's kind of one of the things with Las Vegas. And people say, well, that's Las Vegas. That's their fault for not having a economy that's, that can sustain itself. And I'm like, nah, it isn't. We're a town that's based on tourism. It's been working for us for the longest time, right? We're booming here, man. We just built the Raiders Stadium. They were talking about building a soccer stadium. We just got the hockey team. They're thinking about getting a basketball team. Like, things were booming out here, man. And then this thing came and shut everything down. The problem now is people don't have jobs anymore. In 2007, when the market crashed, people were still working. Some people didn't have jobs and some industries were affected, but for the most part, casinos were still busy, man. People were still coming to town. People were still spending money. People in America may not be traveling that much, but we had so many people from Brazil, from Japan, from China, from they were all still coming. They were all still coming in by masses. A lot of people from Mexico were coming to Las Vegas. So even though we had the housing crisis here, the casinos were still busy. So, people were still working. They weren't able to pay their bills and stuff. A lot of people they just let their loans go bad, but they were still working. They were still at their jobs. This time it's different because we have the same high home prices, but this time nobody's working, and it doesn't look like anyone's going to be going back to work anytime soon. The casinos this time around are not booming. The casinos are dead. In my opinion, our governor, I feel like he hit the panic button, and instead of him looking at our city and our state, just within ourselves, like, okay, what do we need to do? I feel like he didn't really have any answers and he didn't know what to do. So he basically just copied what California did and locked everything down. And unfortunately, we are not in the same position as LA or California. Our economy is run differently. Our politics here are run differently. It's a different state. It's just different the way it is here. So what ended up happening is he shut everything down, and things fell apart pretty quickly over here. There's no casino traffic. No one's coming to town anymore. The airport is empty. The casinos are empty. MGM Grand just laid off 15,000 people. I live near 2 casinos that are owned by Station Casinos, Texas Station and Fiesta. Both of those casinos are still closed down. They got boarded up windows and walls. So I don't know when those are going to reopen. I don't know if they're going to reopen. There's still some casinos on the Strip that aren't even open yet. So you take the loss of jobs with the rising home costs. It doesn't seem like it's going to end too well. I hope I'm wrong. I really do, but it doesn't look too good. We have the moratorium on the evictions right now, so people can't be evicted from their properties right now. But that's been going on since March, April, May, June, July, August, September. 7 months now. People haven't been paying their rent. They haven't been paying their bills. And if you ask me, Robert, are those people saving their money? They're not saving their money. They're spending their money like they're spending their money like crazy. Buying new cars, buying whatever. None of these people are saving their money because they all thought they were going to go back to work, and that's not going to happen. And guess what's happening now? People aren't going back to work, and all those eviction things, that's all going out the window. So people are going to have to start paying their bills now. They're not going to have any extra money coming in because they just took away the extra unemployment money. There's not another stimulus coming. So what are you going to do? I don't know what people are going to do. I don't think it's going to be good. I think people are going to be evicted from their apartments, from their condos, from their houses. People aren't going to be able to pay their mortgages, and I just don't think it's going to end well. A lot of people are telling me that's not the case, and they don't think there's going to be a housing crisis because it's not the banks this time. It was caused by the banks, but I'm like, yeah, seems to me like it was better. It's caused by the banks, but at the same time, people are still working. Now, the property value rising is still higher than it was before, and people don't have jobs now. So that seems pretty bad to me, but I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but it doesn't. I don't think it's gonna end very well for us here in Las Vegas. I have agents telling me there's no inventory right now because of the uncertainty. People don't know if they should sell their house and move, or if they should stay here. They don't really know what's going to happen. If you knew for sure that there was going to be a bust next year and the housing market was going to crash, then there would be no doubt you would sell your house right now and maybe try to move somewhere else, But people don't know what's going to happen. People who are selling their property now are definitely taking a chance that there's going to be a crash and they're going to be able to afford something. But most of the people who live here are selling their properties and they're moving back home with their family. They're moving back in with their parents. They can't afford it anymore, so they're just leaving. There's no opportunity out here anymore for them, so they're just gone. And that's pretty sad. So what's the future for Las Vegas real estate? It's hard to say. I really hope that there is not another crash, and I hope things can kind of stay the way they are. At the same time, as a local who is a homeowner, I wouldn't be able to afford a house right now if I was looking for one. And in a way, I think we need another crash, man. it's not good, but at the same time, like the the property values are way, way, way overpriced right now, and I think we needed to we needed to regulate again. I just think right now it's crazy, and it's sad because anytime there's a crash, people, there's always people who are affected by it. But man, if we could get house pricing back to where it was when it was affordable, we can get people in houses again, and I think it'd be good. I'll get a lot of locals to be buying houses, because all these people coming from out of state, driving up the prices, they're not adding anything to the city, anything of value. They come here with their outside beliefs. They think they know what they're doing, and they don't. They want to do things their own way. They don't want to adapt to the way things are here in Las Vegas. They want to do things like the way they did in California or New York or wherever. And demographics are changing, politics are changing, values are changing. On top of the housing crisis, crime is going up in Las Vegas. Property crimes are huge. If you got someone at your house who's stealing your shit, the cops aren't going to come help you out, man. They're just not. You can call them. They're not going to come in your house. You're on your own, man. This kind of sucks, but it's just kind of what it is. But so yeah, guys, what do you think? Do you think Las Vegas is going to have another crash? Do you think Las Vegas is going to be fine? What do you say? What do you think is going to happen? Feel free to leave your comments below and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from some other opinions, see what other people are thinking, and because it's all about having as much information as you can, and I'm all about sharing my information and insight, any information and insight that I have that I can share with you to help you out, and I'm all about it. So if you have any insider information you can share with me, please leave it down below, so I can definitely read those comments. Anyways, if you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and yeah, stay tuned for the next video. See you guys.